Okay, so today's lesson is on parallel and perpendicular lines. So parallel lines we know will never intersect, and that's because when lines are parallel, they have the same slope. So in this example here, this red line and this blue line are parallel, and they will never intersect, and we can see that, how they run the exact same direction and the same angle. And if we were to look at the equations of these lines, here we have a slope of negative 2/3. And over here, we also have a slope of negative 2/3. So parallel lines have the same slope. Perpendicular lines, on the other hand, will intersect, and they intersect very specifically to form right angles. So here I have my red line and my blue line, and this in here is going to be a right angle. And actually, all four of these would be right angles because those are perpendicular. Now, two lines are perpendicular if and only if the product of their slopes is 1. So in other words, if I take the slope of one line and multiply it by the slope of the other line, those two multiplied together should be -1. And we refer to this kind of as opposite reciprocals. So my red line here, it has a slope of -2/3. And my blue line has a slope of 3/2. So if I were to multiply these together, when we multiply fractions, we go across the top, -2 times 3 is 6, and then we go across the bottom, 3 times 2 is 6, and then we reduce that to -1. So those would give me perpendicular lines, because when I multiply them, they give me -1. But there's kind of a shortcut or a way to find the perpendicular slope without having to go through the math and trial and error. Let's say I had a slope of 3/4 positive. Opposite means change the sign. So 3/4 is positive, the perpendicular, it will be negative. Opposite reciprocals. Reciprocals mean to flip the numerator and denominator. So now instead of 3/4, I flip it over 4/3. So a slope of 3/4 would be perpendicular with a slope of -4/3. Those are opposite signs, and they're flip or reciprocal fractions. So let's practice this a little bit. We have a bunch of problems here. Before we get started, let's talk about these symbols. So these two lines here mean parallel, and this upside down T means perpendicular. So if I have a slope of -3/4, parallel means it would be the same. -3/4. Perpendicular would be the opposite reciprocal. So because my slope is negative, I'm going to have a positive, and then reciprocal, flip it over. 4/3. So we're going to go work through all of these. So example B here, my slope is 2/3. Parallel, that's these two lines. Parallel slope is the same, so 2/3. And then perpendicular means opposite. My original slope is positive, opposite negative, and then reciprocal, flip it over. Example C. Parallel slope means same slope, so just -3/5. Perpendicular is opposite reciprocal. So the slope they give me is negative, so the opposite would be positive, and reciprocal, flip it over, 5/3. Why don't you guys take a moment and do D? So parallel slope is same, perpendicular, opposite, reciprocals. Now, example E starts to ask us a few different types of understandings about slope. Here my slope is 4, so parallel is easy. It's just 4. But perpendicular, we need opposite reciprocal. Well, positive for the opposite would be negative, but to flip it or to find the reciprocal, we want to write 4 as a fraction. So 4 over 1. Now I can flip that 1 over 4. So anytime you're given a whole number slope, just write it over 1 in fraction form, and then you'll be able to flip it. So F gives us another opportunity to do this. Parallel slope is the same. Perpendicular slope, opposite, and then I need to write this as a fraction so I can flip it. So negative 1 over 1. So now when I flip it, I still have 1 over 1, which would just be positive 1. So the slope negative 1 and positive 1 are opposite reciprocals and they're perpendicular to one another. Even though they may not look like reciprocals, they are. Okay, so what we want to do here in this example is we want to be able to write the equation of a line that's parallel to another one. So write the equation of a line that's parallel to the line 3/5 x minus 7, and it goes through the point 10, comma, negative 4. 10, comma, positive 4, sorry. So first thing we want to do is identify the slope of that equation. So m would be 3/5. And then this problem wants us to find the parallel. So parallel m, or parallel slope, is 3 over 5. Once you find that slope, you're done with this equation. You don't need that for anything else. It's just there to mess you up and distract you. We're done with them. We have a slope, and then we have a point over here that we're going to use because this point is going to be on our line. So that's going to make up x1, comma, y1. Now we can use our point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'm going to plug in the x1, y1 for my point, and m is going to be that parallel slope. So y minus 4 equals 3/5 times x minus 10. Distribute your slope. So 3/5 times negative 10. We're going to write negative 10 as a fraction, negative 10 over 1. So now we can go across the top and across the bottom. Negative 30 over 5, which equals negative 6. So that goes right here, minus 6. And then I'll add 4. And this would be the equation of our line. This line is parallel to this original line, and this line that we just wrote goes to the point 10, negative 4. So let's do another example here. Write the equation of a line that's perpendicular to the line y equals negative 1/2 plus 3 and goes to the point 3, comma, negative 5. So here we have a slope of negative 1/2. But this one's perpendicular. So perpendicular m, opposite, reciprocal means to flip it. So this would equal a slope of 2. Now we're done with this. We don't need it anymore. And we just need our point 3, comma, negative 5, which is x1, y1. Take this information and plug it into point slope form. Y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Y minus negative 5 equals m, that's our perpendicular m, to x minus x1, which is 3. So I'm going to get rid of this double negative. So y plus 5 equals, and then distribute the 2. 2x minus 6. minus 5 from each side because we want y by itself. Y equals 2x minus 11. So now this line, this equation we just found and wrote, is perpendicular to this line here, and it goes through the point 3, comma, negative 5. All right, here's another example. So here we're writing the equation of a line, and it's parallel to y equals 3x plus 7 and goes to the point negative 6, comma 2. Start off with your slope. M equals 3. That's right here. mx plus b. And parallel would be the same slope, so 3. Now we're done with this. We don't need it anymore. x1, y1 is a point on the line. So y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And I'm going to go ahead and plug in my x1, y1, and the m. Y minus 2 equals parallel m times x minus negative 6. So first thing I'll do is I'm going to get rid of this double negative inside. And then I can distribute this 3 for my slope. So y minus 2 on the left, 3x plus 18 on the right. We want to get y by itself, so add 2. So y equals 3x plus 20. So this line goes through the point negative 6, 2, and it is parallel to this line here. Okay, so now you're going to try one. Find a perpendicular line to y equals negative 2/3 x plus 1, and it goes through this point, negative 4, negative 3. So determine what the original m is, or your slope, and find your perpendicular slope. And then use point slope form. Alright, hit pause, try the problem out. Okay, it's all set up for you, you just got to kind of go through those steps. Alright, so the slope of the line it gave me is negative 2/3. So my original m is negative 2/3. But we want to find perpendicular m, so we need positive opposite reciprocals or flips, so positive 3/2. Now we're done with that, and I'm going to plug my information in. So y minus negative 3 equals my perpendicular slope, 3/2, times x minus negative 4. First thing, clean up all these double negatives. Y plus 3 equals 3/2 times x plus 4. Now you can distribute the slope through the parentheses, the 3/2. Y plus 3 equals 3/2 x plus 3/2 times 4, which we're going to write as 4/1 in fraction form. Multiply across the top is 12, and multiply across the bottom is 2, and that will reduce to 6, plus 6. And then subtract 3 from each side. So my final equation, or the answer, would be y equals 3/2 x plus 3. Alright, so just some things to remember. The new content from this lesson is about parallel and perpendicular slopes. Okay, so parallel slope is the same slope, and perpendicular is your opposite reciprocal. or flip and switch. And that equation in the problem, it only has one job. That's it. It just tells you the slope. Once you find your slope, cross it off. It's useless. It does nothing else for us. And then we're going to continue writing our equations with point and slope form and then solving it for our slope intercept. In other words, solve for y. So y equals mx plus b. Okay. But this parallel and perpendicular section on top is the really new stuff and the really important stuff for this lesson. All about same slopes and opposite reciprocals. And remember, the equation they give you, it has one job only, just one, to tell you the slope. And then it's useless. So just cross that off. All right, so that's it for this lesson.